From a naval juggernaut to a world power that crumbled from the inside out is part 2 of When Empires Fall. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to They Will Kill You. Hit the like button and request any topics you'd like to learn about in the comments section below. Number 5. Spanish Empire. The Spanish Empire is often referred to as the first global empire in history. Much of its success in expanding territories was attributed to its prowess as a naval power. It steadily grew in power from the late 15th century to the early 19th, and would become the first empire on which the sun never sets. Spain initiated the European colonization of the Americas, which began with Christopher Columbus in the Caribbean islands. In the early 16th century, Spain conquered the Inca and Aztec empires. Spain then earned a major naval victory over the Ottoman Empire in 1571, which underlined its potential as the world's leading power. The Spanish Empire controlled vast overseas territories in the Americas and in the Asian archipelago of the Philippines. It also had territories in Europe, Oceania and Africa. At its height, the Spanish Empire measured close to 8 million square miles. Some historians refer to the initial stages of Spanish conquest as the most devastating example of genocide in history. The death toll of indigenous populations may have been as high as 70 million. This has also been attributed to the natives' low immunological resistance to diseases brought over from the European continent. The Spanish Empire was already beginning to crumble by 1808 when Napoleon Bonaparte invaded the Iberian Peninsula. The Spanish king abdicated and Napoleon put his brother on the throne. The sentiment of separation from the empire that had been brewing in the colonies eventually reached its boiling point. The Spanish-American Wars of Independence resulted in Spain losing its most valuable colonies and effectively put an end to the global empire. Number 4. Napoleon Bonaparte's empire. For more than a decade, Napoleon Bonaparte controlled the European and global affairs as he led France's military to a series of monumental victories. Within the context of the French Revolution, Napoleon quickly rose through the military ranks. He began as an artillery officer and became a general when he was only 24 years old. He conquered the entire Italian peninsula within a year and even organized an expedition into Egypt as a means of controlling trade in the region. In 1799, Napoleon orchestrated a coup and became First Consul, the highest position in the French Republic. Despite having inherited a chaotic state, Napoleon strengthened it politically, economically, and from a military perspective. Fueled by public approval and an unquenchable ambition, he became France's first emperor in 1805. Various European powers, usually led by Britain, would form a series of coalitions against Napoleon, known as the Napoleonic Wars. The emperor earned his greatest victory at the Battle of Austerlitz, when his great army defeated the Russian and Austrian empires. Napoleon would continue to conquer territories and solidify his iron grip on Europe. One of the highest points of his empire was forcing European powers into treaties in 1807. He would also bring liberal reforms to the conquered territories that revolutionized political systems. The Napoleonic Code, for example, has influenced the legal systems of many countries. The beginning of the end for Napoleon's empire was the invasion of Russia in 1812. Despite earning several victories and even taking Moscow, his army endured heavy losses and suffered the effects of the Russian winter. He was ultimately defeated and forced to abdicate in 1814. He escaped from his exile on the island of Elba in 1815 and once again took control of France. The Allied European forces earned a definitive victory against Napoleon at the Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon lived out the remainder of his days in exile on the island of Helena. Before we continue with our list, answer this question. Which of these isn't a quote by Napoleon Bonaparte? Was it A. A leader is a dealer in hope. B. Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake. C. If you want a thing done well, do it yourself. D. I do not pilfer victory. Let us know what you think in the comment section below and stay tuned to find out the right answer. Number 3. Caliphates. A caliphate is an Islamic state whose leader, the caliph, is regarded as the religious and political successor of the Prophet Muhammad, the founder of Islam. In medieval times, between 632 and 1258, there were 3 major caliphates which took shape after the death of Muhammad. The Rashidun, Umayyad, and Abbasid caliphates ruled consecutively and steadily developed into major empires. After the Abbasid family overthrew the previous ruling dynasty in 750, they consolidated power around the city of Baghdad. At that point, the empire stretched well over 4 million square miles. The period that followed is known as the Islamic Golden Age, in which the territory became a major cultural, scientific, and artistic center. It all ended in 1258, when the Mongols, led by Hulagu Khan, sacked the city of Baghdad. The caliphate maintained some semblance of power in Egypt until it was taken over by the Ottoman Empire. The Ottomans also seized control of the holy cities of Mecca and Medina and became the de facto leaders of the Muslim world. They established what was known as the Ottoman Caliphate, which lasted until the end of the Ottoman Empire in 1924. Number 2. Ottoman Empire. For a period of about 600 years, the Ottoman Empire was at the center of interactions between the Eastern and Western worlds. Its roots were placed at the end of the 13th century by Osman I, the leader of the Ottoman Turks. While only a small principality during Osman's time, the dynasty bearing his name would turn it into a transcontinental empire. Beginning in 1354, when the Ottomans crossed into Europe and conquered the Balkans, Mehmed the Conqueror then ended the Byzantine Empire by conquering Constantinople in 1453. The Ottoman Empire reached its peak during the reign of Suleiman the Magnificent from 1494 to 1566. With his fleet dominating the seas, Suleiman expanded the territory into much of the Middle East and large regions of North Africa. Under Suleiman, the empire also flourished in artistic, literary, and architectural regards. In the centuries after Suleiman's death, the empire would maintain its position and even know a period of peace. However, rival powers such as the Russian and Habsburg empires steadily became its military superiors. Consequently, the Ottomans were defeated in several battles, which prompted a series of reforms and a policy of modernization. Despite becoming stronger and more organized in the 19th century, the empire lost control in the Balkans, which had once been the starting point of its conquest. Threatened by further territorial loss, the Ottomans allied themselves with Germany and thus entered World War I on the side of the Central Powers. After the Allied powers emerged victorious, the empire's Middle Eastern holdings were portioned between France and Britain. The Ottoman monarchy received its final blow during the Turkish War of Independence, when the Republic of Turkey emerged. So, which quote didn't belong to the French emperor? Napoleon was known as a brilliant strategist and a leader that could inspire his followers. That being said, D, I do not pilfer victory, is a quote attributed to Alexander the Great. It's been interpreted as meaning that his victories in battle were earned and not stolen through ploys and trickery. It would only seem fitting considering that Alexander never lost a battle. The empire he built was featured in part 1 of this series. If you haven't yet, make sure you check it out. Number 1. Russian Empire. The Russian Empire is the 3rd largest empire in history in terms of landmass. From the mid-14th to the early 15th century, Tsar Ivan the Great set the background for the empire that followed. He ended the Mongolians' hold over the Russians and laid the foundations of the Russian state. Ivan tripled his territory and had one of the longest reigns of all Russian rulers. The empire rose in parallel to the decline of other major powers, most notably the Ottomans, Persian, and the Swedish Empire. The territory of the Russian Empire was extended by notable leaders such as Peter the Great and Catherine the Great. Imperial Russia was instrumental in hindering Napoleon's conquest, which at one point seemed to know no bounds. At the beginning of the 19th century, the Russian Empire stretched from the Arctic Ocean in the north to the Black Sea in the south and from the Baltic Sea in the west, into Alaska and Northern California in the east. Throughout its existence, the Russian Empire was mainly ruled by the House of Romanov. Under Tsar Nicholas II, Russia entered World War I to the defense of the Serbs, its fellow Orthodox Slavs. By that time, there had been growing unrest within the empire sparked by the Revolution of 1905. It happened after a massacre known as Bloody Sunday, in which soldiers opened fire on the crowds protesting outside the Winter Palace. During the war, to bolster morale, the Tsar took personal command of the army and went to the front. A mystic named Grigory Rasputin had befriended the royal family and even convinced Empress Alexandra he could heal her son. He gained notable influence during the Tsar's absence, damaging his prestige, but would ultimately be assassinated by nobles in 1916. Economical failures during World War I caused further turmoil in Russia. The challenge to power eventually came from the Bolsheviks, a socialist faction led by Vladimir Lenin. The 1917 February Revolution overthrew the Tsarist system, ushering in the era of the Soviet Union. Tsar Nicholas abdicated and was executed by the Bolsheviks alongside his family in 1918. Lenin subsequently became the head of government and founded the Russian Communist Party. Thanks for watching. What other fallen empires do you know? Tell us about them in the comments section below.